I'm going to be walking you through step by step how to build a member dashboard or member dashboard page. This is a page that your paying members or students will see immediately after they sign in every time. It's also what they'll see right after they purchase your membership or your course for the first time. And I'm going to be walking you through how to build this page using Thrive Architect. So if you've been using Thrive Suite at all, and especially if you've created one or more courses using Thrive Apprentice, you might be wondering, do I even need a member dashboard page at all? Doesn't one come with Thrive Apprentice? Well, you do get a page provided automatically when you use Thrive Apprentice. This is your school homepage, also known as the All Courses list page. Now, this will list all of the courses that you offer your students or the courses that your students have signed up for, and that's great. But let's say you offer office hours on a regular basis for your students or your members to ask you questions or for you to talk about a certain topic. There's no access element on this page for them to easily access your office hours. There's no button or image that they can easily click through to your office hours. Now, similarly, if you offer, let's say, a resource library, there's no button or image for them to easily click through and access that resource library. Now, in addition to access, you often want to notify them of time-sensitive or pertinent news or events that are coming up. For instance, with the office hours, you might want to notify your paying members that, hey, in the next office hours session, at the top of the hour, I'm going to lead off with talking about this specific topic, so that if any of your members are interested in that specific topic, they'll be sure to attend. And similarly, there's no element on this school homepage for you to post notifications to your members or students. This is what I call a notifications panel or notifications area. And so you're going to want to have a member dashboard. And so the purpose of me making this video is to give you this page. If you follow the steps I'm taking on the screen here using Thrive Architect, you're going to have this member dashboard built. Thrive Architect is a powerful page builder tool that will give you fine, granular control over the details of any page that you're building using it. But what comes along for the ride in the tool that gives you detailed control is that there are about 100 knobs to turn, if you will, 100 settings to adjust. So there's definitely a learning curve with using Thrive Architect if you're new to it. So another purpose of me making this video is to give you a feel for what are the common elements and settings, and you see me work these settings as I build this page. So alright, now with all that said, let's first take a look at this member dashboard that we're going to build together. I'm going to talk briefly about the elements on this member dashboard, what we're going to build, and then we're going to get right into building this member dashboard step by step. Alright, so this is the member dashboard that we'll be building. Now, as you can see here, this page has a header and a footer. Now, I'm going to assume that you have your header and footer set up on your site for your whole site or for a page that you're going to be working on for building this dashboard. Now, you can set up your header and footer easily within Thrive Theme Builder. And when you start up Thrive Architect, to start building this page, you can simply choose to edit a blank page with a header and footer. That's going to be one of your choices. So then the content of this member dashboard that we'll be building is going to be everything you see between the header and the footer. So now, as I was mentioning before, at the top of this page is a notifications panel, and I have some example notifications here. Now, on the very left of this panel is actually a personalization element that you commonly see in a membership page or dashboard. Again, this dashboard is what they will see immediately every time after they log in. So the dashboard is greeting them by showing their first name and also their photo if they have their photo set up with a global service like Gravatar. Now then, the rest of the notifications panel are going to be actually the notifications, and I have two sections here. First one is latest news. I have a couple of example notifications here. Piano course version 2 just released, and then below that new templates available right now in the resource library. And for each of these, your members or students can click through this More button to find out details about each of these. And to the right, there's upcoming events. And these would be the usual time-based, time-sensitive events like office hours, like I've shown here, a live training session, etc. So the notification shows the date and time of the event, and they can RSVP through clicking through this button. And below that is the dashboard part of this dashboard page. It shows your members at a glance all the membership components that they have access to as a paying member or student, and they can easily click through to access any specific component. So right now, this is what we'll be building, and now let's start building it. So I'm going to start a new page on my WordPress site the way we always do. Add new from pages. And I'm going to name this new page Member Dashboard Demo. And then I'm just going to publish it. You can also save draft if you like. It really doesn't matter much at this point. Then you want to launch Thrive Architect button at the top here. And this will start up the Thrive Architect editor. And for a new page that you're creating, it will ask you which kind of page you want to load into the editor to start editing. And as I mentioned before, you want to choose the blank page with header and footer. So we're going to do that. So as you can see, this is exactly what's been loaded in Thrive Architect. This is a blank page with just a header and footer. Now, when you're starting a brand new page, Thrive Architect gives you a helpful prompt in the middle of the page here that says add a block or drag an element into the page. Now, I know some of you are already familiar with Thrive Architect to some extent, and then there are others of you who are brand new to Thrive Architect. Now, for those who are new, I just want to take a quick second to orient you to this editor. Now, the editing is going to be all done in this left editing sidebar. So whenever you click on any element, the editing controls and settings for that element is going to be shown in the left sidebar. And you can go ahead and make your edits. Now, there's a sidebar on the right side as well that's collapsed by default. And you click on any element here to expand the sidebar. And I'll also refer to this as the element tray because it's like a tray that slides out and allows you to choose any element. So you can select any element that you want to drag onto this page. And this is how you add an element onto the page. All right, I'm going to collapse this again to make sure you see which element I'm selecting here. This is the second element from the top, and the icon for it looks like a plus sign in a square. And when you hover over it, it will say add element. So slide out the element tray, and the first element we want to select to add to this page is the background section. So just click and drag. Click background section here and drag it. And here on the blue bolded line, there'll be text that says above block. And here, this is below block. So it shows you where this element that you're dragging and holding is going to be dropped into. So I'm going to just drop it above block, above this add a block element here. So when I let go, the add a block prompt is going to go away, and we've just added the background section to this page. Now, as soon as we do this, the background section is selected by default, and the editing controls for it immediately show up within the left editing sidebar. And now the first thing we want to do, where it says inherit width from landing page under main options, this is turned on by default. We want to turn it off. And now this allows us to say whether or not we want the content of this page to cover the entire screen width, and we do want to do that. So we're going to turn this on. And let's now set our background color. And to do that, in the left sidebar, we want to go to background style. And from the various options, you want to select solid color, the first option. And this palette that pops up, and at the bottom where it says theme colors. Now, if you've set up your theme on your site using Thrive Theme Builder, it automatically generates a nice extensive set of color accents that are derived from your main brand color. And this is all set up for you when you give it your main brand color. It doesn't require any work on your part. One of the nice things about using Thrive Theme Builder. Now my main brand color is the first color here, this dark green. And for the background here though, I want to choose this color accent, and you want to hit apply. And from time to time, as you work on building your page, especially after you've made a series of changes, you want to hit save work. All right, let's refer to the finished member dashboard. Now the first element we want to add is the notifications area on top. In the bottommost layer of the notifications panel, you'll notice is this rectangular area with a white background. So let's first add that. And on the right collapse sidebar, again, add element. And here we want to add a content box. So drag that out here, and we want to drag it in the middle of the background section we just created. It will say inside background section. We just drop it. And this has a white background color. So let's first add that. Solid color under background style. And here we want to choose the white background color. Again, hit apply. Now going back to the finished dashboard, notice that this notifications panel on the left and right sides are pretty inset from the edges of the page. In other words, there's a fair bit of margin on the left and right sides of this notifications panel. So now let's go back and set our left and right margins. And for that, we go to the option above background style, which is layout and position. Choose that element. Now there's margins and there's padding. This blue area you see here, that's the padding. And the padding is space inside this rectangle, this content box. So in other words, the actual content that you're going to drop into this content box is going to be 20 pixels on all four sides inset from the borders of the content box. And this 20 pixel padding on all four sides is set by default whenever you add a content box. Now the difference between margins and padding is that margins refer to the spacing between the borders of this element and anything else that surrounds it. So in this case, there's zero margin on all four sides of this content box. And that's why we see the content box spanning the entire width of the screen. So I'm going to add a 150 pixel margin to the left and right of the content box. And to do that, you can either use this drag slider mechanism. So as I slide this, I'm dragging this to the left here and adding margin on the left side. Now I prefer to click onto the number and just editing it because it's quicker. So I'm going to click onto the left margin here and 150. And immediately you see the margin is set on the left. There's this spacing that's inset now on the content box on the left. And similarly on the right, I'm going to add a 150 pixel margin to the right. And while I'm at it, I'm actually going to add a 10 pixel margin on the top just to drop the notifications panel a little bit lower. And similarly, 10 pixels on the bottom. And I'm going to take the top and bottom padding down to 10 pixels. Now going back to the finished dashboard, you see that the notifications panel really consists of a set of 3 columns. The leftmost column is the member profile, the center column is the latest news column, and the rightmost column is upcoming events. All right, let's go and add this set of columns. Again, add element on the right. And this time we want to choose columns, drag it out, and we want to place it right inside the content box. And it's a set of 3 columns, so we choose that. And I'm just going to choose equal size columns because I'm going to be able to adjust the size of the columns later on. All right, there are our columns. Now let's start building the member profile within the leftmost column. And the member profile, of course, is the member photo and first name. Now we're actually going to do what we kind of just did, which is we're going to put another content box inside the left column and then put another set of columns inside that content box. This time it's going to be a 2-column set. And this is because there are 2 distinct elements here. The member's photo and first name, they're distinct elements side by side horizontally. So again, we know that that means we want a set of columns. So it's going to be a 2-column set. And the content box allows you to easily set a background for the member profile as a whole. So now let's go ahead and do that. First, we're going to add a content box into the leftmost column. Then we're going to drag a set of columns inside this content box. And we're going to choose a set of 2 columns. Now I'm actually going to adjust the sizing or the widths of the 3 outer columns, the 3 main columns that make up our notifications panel. Now I happen to know that the leftmost column, the member profile, makes up about 14% of the total 3-column set. The latest news column, the center one, occupies about 41%, and the rightmost column, the upcoming events column, takes up about 45% of the total 3-column set. Now, as you can imagine, there's no magic to these percentages. These are just what I've arrived at through a few iterations, just playing around with sizing the columns based on what looked good to me and also how much room I think these notifications will need spacing wise. Alright, so I'm going to resize the columns approximately 14. And by the way, there's a way to hit these percentages as you're resizing the columns exactly. If you want to set the widths to multiples of 5%, if you hold down the control key as you drag, it will adjust by 5%. Okay, and right here, I've landed on 45% for the rightmost column. Now again, this is holding down the control key as you drag and change the sizing of the columns. Now I'm working on a Windows PC. On a Mac, I'm not totally sure, but I believe it's the command key on the Mac. Alright, next, we actually want to get rid of some unnecessary spacing here. If you hover over the content box that contains these 2 columns, that is the member profile, there's actually quite a bit of space here. And this is the padding inside of this content box that makes the member photo and first name unnecessarily small. So first, click inside the content box, and under layout and positions on the left sidebar, you see that there are 20 pixels of margin as well as padding with this content box. And what I like to do is get rid of just about all of it. Now all I'll leave is 10 pixels margin at the bottom. Now there's actually some more spacing here, as you can see above and below these 2 columns, and that's actually the margins and padding for the 2-column set element associated with these 2 columns. So these are settings that pertain to the 2 columns as a whole. And as you can see here, now that I've selected this columns element for the column set, there is space above and below these 2 columns. So let's remove that. Now I'm just going to get rid of some of it. I'm going to just reduce these to 5 pixels. And as you can see, there's only a tiny bit of spacing above and below the columns now. Now there's also spacing between the 2 columns, and that's called a gutter width. And you get to that from the main options. And under the main options is the first setting. And I'm going to drop it to 0, just drag it all the way to the left. Alright, there's just one more set of spaces I want to remove here, and that's the spacing between this content box and the column set elements for the 3 main columns that make up our notifications panel. Alright, let's select it using the breadcrumbs. So this is the columns on the breadcrumbs with an S, and you can see the outline of it. And on the layout and positions, on the left sidebar, you can see there are definitely margins and spacing. And I'm going to get rid of just about all of it. 0 here, and I'm just going to leave a 10 pixel margin on the bottom. Alright, now that we've removed the unnecessary spacing, let's actually add our member photo. So from the element tray, select image and drag that into the left column for the member photo. Now, because this is the member's photo, you don't want to select a static image from your media library. You want to select dynamic source on the left here. Now, on the main options for this image, you see that dynamic is selected under element type, and then dynamic source under the drop down, you want to select user image. And what this will do is pull in the photo that your members have set up with Gravatar if they've done that. So select user image, then under layout and position, let's get rid of these top and bottom margins as well. And let's center align the photo. And just one more thing I want to do here is under borders and corners, instead of having this image by default be square, I want to round it. And you can either round the corners by dragging this up or just enter in a pixel value. Either way, about 60 pixels will do it. I haven't yet set the background color for this member profile. So let's go ahead and do that. That's the content box, again selected on the breadcrumbs, really easy. Then let's select a background color, solid color, and let's choose the same background color. Hit apply. Alright, so let's move on to the first name. From the element tray again, this time drag in a text box into the right column. Then remove this text and type in name, highlight it. Then from the text editor bar above right here, you want to select this stack of coins icon. I don't know how else to describe it, but it looks like a stack of coins. And that's the dynamic element or dynamic text setting. So with this highlighted text, you also, of course, want to pull in the member's first name. And so under dynamic text, select source. You want to choose user data. Then you want to choose under the select an option dropdown, WordPress user first name. Now you want to unselect link to user profile, because right here you don't want your member to be able to go to their profile by clicking on their name. Then hit insert. And as you can see, my name is inserted here. And anyone who is a member of your site will have their first name pulled in here. Alright, then what I like to do is make the text slightly larger, 22, and I want to bold it. And then there's line spacing underneath this text that I want to remove, and it's going to be under line spacing, which is right below the font size. So I want to take the line spacing to 0. Then under layout and position, center align the text. Alright, that's our member profile. And if you collapse it, you can see that the member photo and first name fit nicely within the content box. And the last thing I want to do is just to add a drop shadow to make this content box, which is the member profile area, pop out a little bit more. First, make sure that it is selected, the content box. Under shadow, then the center option, drop shadow. All you have to do is just click it. And I usually like the default setting for this. Apply. Then let's collapse the sidebar and do a comparison. Refer back to our finished member dashboard. Alright, we can see that the member profile area is done. Alright, let's move on to the center column, which is the latest news notifications area. Alright, bring back the editing sidebar. Alright, first I'm going to add a content box to hold everything in this column. Just drag it in here. And then I'm going to drag a text box into the content box. And type in here the latest news. Then under the main options in the editing sidebar, I want to bold this and make the text slightly bigger. 24. Then center the text. Then set a background color for this text box. Under background style, solid color. And this time I'm going to choose my main brand color, this dark green here. Hit apply. And again, it's so easy if you're using Thrive Theme Builder to have everything that you're creating on any page match your brand. Then I'm going to invert the text color to white. Hit apply. So it contrasts nicely with the background. Then remove all the line spacing under the text. Just drag this up. Then the last thing I want to do with this text element is just to round the corners of this text box. So again, borders and corners. 60. Then let's give this outside content box a background color. Select it. Solid color. And I'm going to use the same background color. Again, be sure to hit apply. And then adjust some of the spacing that comes by default with this content box. Layout and position. Now I like to get rid of or reduce a lot of the margins and paddings as I'm working with elements within Thrive Architect. But now that is just my preferences and what looks good to me.
But it goes without saying that feel free to adjust and experiment to find the margins and paddings that work for you, to find what looks good to you. Alright, now I'm going to remove or reduce some of this. Now for the paddings, I've got 10 pixel paddings, except on the bottom I've got 5 pixels. Now for the margins, I've gotten rid of all the margins except I've left 10 pixels on the bottom. Now just like with the member profile content box, I've also left 10 pixels of margin there. Now having 10 pixels of margin or having none on the bottom doesn't affect anything in this desktop view of the dashboard. I put 10 pixels of margin on these content boxes because of how it looks in the mobile view. And I'll show you what the effect is and also how this dashboard looks on the mobile view shortly. So just hang tight there. Now looking at the finished dashboard, we can see that the notifications are actually two distinct elements side by side horizontally. The text of each notification and then a button that they can click through to find out the details of that notification. And so we know this is a set of 2 columns. So now let's add a set of columns below the text box, but inside the content box. Set of 2 columns. Then let's give this column set a white background. Then I'm going to adjust spacing, layout and positions. I just took the paddings down to 2 pixels each, top and bottom. And I left the margins at the top and bottom at 10 pixels. Then I'm going to take the gutter width of this column set to 0. Spacing is pretty tight in here already, so I'm going to remove that. Then adjust the column split to 70% for the text and 30% for the button. Alright, roughly that. Alright, then let's now drag in the text box in here into the left column. And we'll use our example notification. Piano course version 2 out. Bold this text. I'll leave it left justified. Take the line spacing down to 0 again. I'll say released instead of out because that's what I have in the finished member dashboard. Then adjust some spacings for this text box. Alright, 10 for the left padding and 3 for the bottom padding. Now let's add our button. And drag a button into the right column here. Alright, change the text to more. Leave it at 18 pixels and bold it. Now this is the inline text part of the button. So you want to click outside of that and click on the button itself. On the breadcrumbs, you can make sure that the button is selected. Now I'm going to adjust spacing for the button. First remove all the margins. Then adjust the top and bottom paddings to 10. Then in the main options, I just want to make sure that the button is a small size button and I want to align the button center rather than full width. Again, it doesn't matter much here in this desktop view of the dashboard, but I think it looks better in the mobile view, as I'll show you shortly. Now then, under the size and alignment and the button width settings here, there's a setting button link. And this is where you normally enter the link, the URL for where you want to direct your members after they click on this button. And this will obviously be different depending on what this notification is. For this piano course released notification, you probably want to direct them to your piano course's main page. So you would enter in your URL under this target URL field here. Now I'm not going to enter in any URL here because I'm just building this dashboard in this video. So then the last thing I want to do for this notification is just to align the text and the button vertically within this column set. So on the breadcrumbs, select columns with an S for this column set element. And all you have to do on the main options is just to align, where it says vertical position, align center, which is the center button. And that brings the button down and in alignment with the text to the left. All right, so this notification is done. Now, to create another notification like we have a second one in our finished member dashboard, we don't have to make it, we just have to make a copy of this notification. Now, making sure that the column set element, that is columns with an S, is selected on the breadcrumbs. Any element that is selected will have a set of 4 options at the top right of the element. So those are these 4 here in green color. and you want to select the third one for copy. Alright, then all we have to do is just adjust the text of the second notification. Alright, and of course you would change the URL that this button links to the appropriate one for this second notification as well. Alright, so the last thing I want to do here is just to add some shadows and a little bit of rounding at the corners to give it a subtle, refined look. So first, the drop shadow for this content box. Select the content box, drop shadow, hit apply. Then the first column, the first notification, you want to select columns with an S, then drop shadow. And here I want a more subtle length of the shadow. So on the distance, I'm going to change the 8 to a 4. Same thing with the second notification. Choose the column with an S, drop shadow, change the distance to a 4. Hit apply. Now for rounding the corners, just go to borders and corners, and under rounding on the individual notifications, I'm going to add 6 pixels to the corners. Same with the first notification. Again, make sure you select columns with an S, add 6 pixels to the corners. Then for the whole content box, I like to add 8 pixels. Now these are very subtle differences. These are what looked good to me when I was doing the finished member dashboard, so I'm going to go with that. Now while we're rounding corners, I didn't round the corners of the member profile content box, so I'm going to do that here. Again, add 8 pixels. Then add 6 pixels to the corners of the entire notifications panel as well. So the outer content box, add 6 pixels rounding there. Then I'm going to actually save and preview. Alright, this is what we have for the latest news area of the notifications panel. Look at the finished member dashboard, and we see that it looks exactly the same. Now let's now move on to the rightmost column, upcoming events. Now as you can see, the upcoming events column is pretty similar to the latest news column. In fact, the first 2 elements we're going to add are the same. We're going to add a content box and then a text box. So the content box first. Inside the column, let's set its background color. And now since the text box is exactly the same as the latest news text box, except for the text itself, we're going to just make a copy of this text box. Again, the third option at the top right. And then to move this text box to the right column, you want to select it. And this is the first option at the top right of the text box. Now, as you hover over this first option, you see this arrows at right corners, and it also looks like a plus sign, and you just click and drag into the right column. Inside the column, and first just change the text. Then adjust spacing for this content box. We'll use the same spacings as we use for the latest news content box. Now the upcoming events notification is a set of 3 elements side by side horizontally, as you can see here. First element is the date and time of the event. Then the center element is what the event is, in this case office hours. And the rightmost element is the RSVP button. And by now we know this means a 3-column set. So columns, and make sure you drag it and drop it below the text box, but within the content box. Set of 3 columns. We adjust spacing the same way we did for the latest news notifications. And set the background color for this column set. Reduce the gutter width slightly to 10. So this gives a little more room for each of the elements here. Now the date and time element here is actually the date on top of the time. In other words, these are 2 distinct elements aligned vertically. And just like with elements aligned horizontally, we group these 2 elements together inside the content box. So let's add a content box into the leftmost column here. Then set the spacings for this content box. Then add the top element, the date element, which is the text box. Enter the date of the event. Bold it. Make the text larger, 22. Center it. And remove the line spacing. Then set a background color for this text box. Then since this is a dark background, change the text to white for a good contrast. The text color is under main options. Now while I'm here, let's round this text box 8 pixels. Now let's add our time element below our date. Drag another text box in here, right below this text box. Then enter the time. Then bold and center, as I always do. And also remove line spacing. Now as you can see, removing line spacing can make a big difference when you're working in tight spaces. Alright, now let's add the event name, and that's just a simple text box into the center column. Name of the event. Bold, center as usual. And I want this at 24. Then reduce the line spacing. This time I don't want to remove all of it. I'm going to leave 5 pixels of line spacing at the bottom. Now let's add our final element, the RSVP button. And since we already have done these 2 buttons under latest news, let's copy one of them. I want to select it first, the button, then the third option at the top. Select, first option, drag into the column. Update the text here. Then to align these elements vertically within this column set, we're going to select the column set, again columns with an S. Then under main options, vertical position, hit the center align. And then finally, I'm going to add shadows and rounded corners as I did for the elements within the latest news column. Alright, now our entire notifications panel is complete. Alright, now let's check it against our finished member dashboard. Alright, this is what we've done so far. Again, this is our completed notifications panel and finished member dashboard. You can see that it is the same. Now, so far, we've been building and editing the desktop view of our membership dashboard. But as we all know, nowadays, a lot of your members are going to be viewing their dashboard and accessing their membership components on a mobile phone. So naturally, the mobile view is super important too. And now let's take a look at it. We're going to look at our finished dashboard first. Right, so I open our finished dashboard within Thrive Architect, and there's a horizontal pane at the bottom. That's the preview pane. It says preview. And again, all along we've been looking at the desktop view of this member dashboard as we've been editing it. There's also the tablet view in the center here, and then the rightmost button or tab is for the mobile phone view. Now, to keep this video's length reasonable while still giving you the necessary information, I'm going to skip the tablet view. We're going to go and look at the mobile view. So click on the mobile icon. Now the first thing we notice is that the width of the page in mobile view is naturally much narrower than the desktop view. And so instead of a left to right flow of the elements in our notification panel, in the mobile view, the flow is from top to bottom going down the page. So we have our member profile at the top, followed by latest news, which is in the center column in our desktop view. And now it's below our member profile, followed by upcoming events, which is now below our latest news element. Right now, there are a couple of important differences between the desktop and mobile views that I'm going to point out now. Now going back to our desktop view, and again, just a reminder that this is the finished member dashboard that we're looking at. Now, if you remember, the content box that contains the entire notifications panel, let's click on that content box. Now, the left and right borders of that content box are indented 150 pixels on the left and right sides. So 150 pixels from the left and right edges of the page. But now look at the pixel indent on the mobile view. Now all other dimensions are the same, but this content box is now only 40 pixels indented from the left and right edges of this page in our mobile view. And the reason we need much less of a pixel indent, 40 instead of 150 pixels, is simply because it's a much narrower width on a mobile page. The entire width here of this page is not much more than 200 pixels. So what would happen if you didn't change your pixel indent in your mobile view? Let's go back to the dashboard page that we were working on. If we didn't reduce the pixel indent for our mobile view of the notification panel will look like this. Not a pretty sight. Not nice to look at all. And that's because everything has been squished together. Because as I said, the entire width of the mobile page is not much more than 200 pixels, and we're indenting 150 pixels on both sides. Now let's reduce this to 40 pixel indents like in our finished member dashboard. Now that's much more like it. Now, the takeaway here, of course, is that you do need to adjust some of the dimensions between the desktop and mobile views, particularly the width of elements across the page. And now the nice thing about this is that the changes you make in the mobile view apply only to the mobile view and don't affect the desktop view at all. So now note again on the left editing sidebar that this content box is indent 40 pixels on the left and right. If we switch back to the desktop view, the left and right pixel indents are back up to 150 pixels. And as you can see, the desktop view isn't changed at all. It still has the same width as before. Now again, the changes that you make in the mobile view of your page apply only to the mobile view and won't affect the desktop view. But the reverse is not true. So changes that you make, edits that you make in your desktop view will flow down to your mobile view. When you're designing any page, you simply design the desktop view first and then go to the mobile view to make any necessary changes or deviations from the desktop view there. Now another difference between the desktop and mobile views is that remember when I left 10 pixels of margin below these panels inside the notifications panel. You can think of the latest news column and the upcoming events column as individual smaller panels inside of the main notifications panel. Now, that 10 pixel margin I set on both of these panels didn't change anything here in the desktop view, but let's look at the mobile view. Alright, under the latest news panel, there is spacing that sets apart the latest news panel and the upcoming events panel below that. So there's 10 pixels of spacing here that sets the two panels apart. And similarly, there's also 10 pixels of spacing that sets the member profile apart from the latest news panel. Now I'm going to click on the latest news panel, this content box, and on the left sidebar you see there are 10 pixels of margin. Let's say I remove the 10 pixels of margin, zero that out. Now as you can see here, the bottom border of the latest news panel is stacked right up against the top border of the upcoming events panel below it. So now putting the margin back in, 10 pixels, now you can clearly see the gap between the two panels. So the two panels don't seem to be running together. Alright, let's go back to our desktop view. And now let's move on to build the dashboard part of our member dashboard. Now, as we've been doing all along in this video, we're going to take a look at the finished member dashboard and we'll see structurally what elements one by one we'll add to build this dashboard section of the dashboard. So, as you probably can recognize by now, we're going to first add a content box to hold all the contents of the dashboard section. And inside the content box, first we'll add a text box or a text element. Then we're going to be adding a set of 3 columns, again, because there are 3 elements lined up horizontally side by side. We're going to actually put the columns into yet another content box just for the column set, because the content box is a great way to control the various spacings and other properties for the 3 columns as a whole. Then into each individual column, we're going to want images, and it goes without saying that you assign the appropriate URL links to these images that will link out to these various membership components, course library, community, office hours, etc. Then once we've gotten the first row of 3 columns exactly how we want it, then we can just make a copy and get our second row of 3 columns. Alright, now let's go and implement this now step by step. Alright, I'm going to first add a content box for the entire dashboard section. Alright, below the notifications panel content box, but within the overall background section that we added at the very beginning. Alright, let's add the white background to this content box so we can see it clearly from the background section. Then I'm going to adjust spacing for this content box. And the last thing that I'm going to do in terms of spacing is that I'm going to set a 300 pixel left and right border indent from the left and right edges of the page. Now again, just like with the notifications panel, there's no magic formula that I use to come up with the pixel indent. It's just what looked good to me. So feel free to experiment to find what looks good to you. Now let's go ahead and add our text box. Enter the text we want. Font size 34. Bold it. Center. I'm going to reduce the line spacing. Set the background to my brand color. And set the text to white. And finally, just round the corners of the text box. Alright, now let's add a content box for the first row of membership components. Below the text element, then adjust spacings. I'm going to get rid of the margins. Then set the top and bottom padding to 5 pixels each. I'll leave the left and right paddings unchanged. And next, I'm going to add our 3 column set inside the content box. 3 equal columns. Then I'll remove the margins and paddings for the column set because we don't really need them. Then I'll actually add another content box inside of the individual columns, because inside of each individual column is going to be one of your membership components, like course library, community, office hours, etc. And what's displayed for each are 2 distinct elements aligned vertically, an image on top and then text at bottom. And whenever you have multiple elements you want to line up nicely, it's a good idea to put them into a content box. So let's drag a content box into the leftmost column. Adjust spacings of this. Now let's add our image for our first membership component, which is the course library. Now, as you can imagine, images can be generated many different ways. You can use a photo or graphic from a stock photo site. You can create an image within Canva or another graphics tool. Here I'm going to use a really convenient resource that comes with Thrive Suite, and that's their icon library. And you can access the icon library, logically enough, by dragging an icon element. And you need to scroll down a little bit. And here it is, the icon element. Drag it into the content box. Now, at the top right here, it says there are 7,857 icons. So there's a decent sized library of icons to choose from. Then on the left sidebar here of this icon library pop-up, you can search and filter down to look for the specific icons that you're looking for. So on the left here, you can filter to look at solid icons in this set. You can look for outlined icons, dual tone icons, And there's also a category called brands. I think I can recognize the Amazon icon here. Then below that, there are 2 icon packs you can choose from. First one is Font Awesome, and then the second pack is called Material Icons. Now for me, a potentially more useful way to start searching for icons, particularly if you're not familiar with what's in this library, is just to go up to the search bar here, and that's what I did to pick the icons that I used in the finished member dashboard. Now our first membership component is the course library, as I mentioned, and I chose a graduation cap icon, as you can see here, for the course library. And I found that icon by simply searching for graduation cap. Alright, it found 4 matching icons, and the left one is the one that I chose. And you simply hit select in the bottom right, and there it is. And I'm going to make just a couple of adjustments here. One, the size of the icon, I'm going to up it to 150. Then under layout positions, I'm going to get rid of the margins. Then let's add our text box right below the icon. Enter in our text. Bold that, and I reduce the line spacing to about 5 pixels. Leave the font size at 18 pixels and just center it. Now at any time we're editing, we can collapse this sidebar to see how it would look without the sidebar, and we can compare it to our finished member dashboard. Now we're going to add some shadows and minor touches later on, but the icon and text are there. Alright, let's add the icon and text for the next 2 membership components. Alright, first add a content box to the center column, and since I know I'm going to need another one for the right column, I'm going to do it for the right column as well. Add one in here. Then for the left content box, I'm going to adjust spacing. Similarly for the right content box. Then I'm going to add our icon for our second membership component, which is community. Alright, this is the one I chose. 150 pixels. Remove the margins. Add our text box. Alright, then for our next membership component, which is office hours, the icon first. Select it. Then let's copy this text box. And just drag it over. Adjust the text. Now let's apply a drop shadow to each one of these membership components. We want to select the content box. We want to add the drop shadow to the content box. Now let's take a quick look to compare. Collapse the sidebar, and here's our finished member dashboard. Alright, we can see that we have our first row done. So then all we have to do to create our second row is just to copy and paste. Now we want to select the content box that contains this set of 3 columns. So let's select the content box up here on the breadcrumbs. There it is. You can see it outlined. Then since it's selected, all you need to do is just choose the third option at the top right here. Now, since this is an exact copy of the content box on the top, all the spacings, the margins and paddings are the same as the content box on top. So we don't need to adjust spacings at all for the bottom row. Now all we need to do is to swap out the icon images and the text for the bottom row of membership components. And since the mechanics of doing this is exactly the same as the first row, I won't show the process. Alright, one quick thing to mention here is to select another icon, all you have to do is click the current one, and then under main options, there's a change icon right here. Alright, now all that's left to do is to round the corners of these individual content boxes as well as the outer content box that contains the entire dashboard section, and then also apply a drop shadow to the outer content box. Alright, you've seen me do this earlier in the video. It's just the borders and corners item here on the left sidebar for rounding the corners and shadow for applying the drop shadow. So I won't show it, I'll just do it. Alright, the last thing I'm going to show here is that you're obviously going to want to link out from each of these membership components. So you're going to want to assign a URL link to each one of these content boxes. So for example, this course library content box, select the content box. You can use the breadcrumbs to make sure that the content box is selected and not just the icon or text. Then on the left sidebar here, you see an add link to content box toggle. It's off by default. All you have to do is just toggle that on and just choose what kind of link you want it to be. Usually this is going to be just a regular link. It's called a static link here. Then all you have to do is just enter in the URL right here in the text box underneath. Alright, now I'm going to hit save and preview, the green button at the bottom here. Alright, this is what we've done in this video. Let's compare it to our finished member dashboard. Alright, they do look the same. Now, one final aspect we have to take care of here is that the desktop views of this membership dashboard is done, meaning the desktop version of the dashboard is done. We do need to make a final couple of tweaks to the mobile view of this dashboard. So let's get back into Thrive Architect. Alright, so this is the mobile view for the finished member dashboard. This is the dashboard that we've been referring to as we built the one that we built within this video. Alright, and again, you get to it from the preview pane, this horizontal bar at the bottom of the screen. And you can easily switch between desktop view and mobile view. Now, as we scroll down, everything looks good. And the My Dashboard, the dashboard section looks fine. And most importantly, it is the same width as the notifications panel in our mobile view. Alright, let's now look at the mobile view for the dashboard we just finished building. And if you've watched when we've built our notifications panel, you know what's coming up here. Alright, now the notifications panel looks identical and looks fine. But when we get down to the dashboard section of this dashboard, we see that this section is totally crushed from the fact that we have this massive indent on the left and right of this dashboard section, 300 pixels that we set in our desktop version, when the width of this mobile page is not much more than 200 pixels. Now again, it's easy to fix this. Just select this dashboard section, which is a content box. Alright, we select it. Then all we need to do is under layout and positions. These are the dimensions we've set for the desktop view. All we need to do is to drop the left and right indents of this content box from 300 to 40. And while I'm here, I'm going to tweak the other dimensions slightly. I'm going to reduce the padding left and right to 10 pixels each. Now the text My Dashboard still looks big compared to our reference member dashboard. And all we have to do there is just reduce the size of this text. It's 34 pixels large. All I have to do is just drop it to 24. Here we go. And at this point, this dashboard that we've built in this video, in its mobile view, the mobile version also is exactly the same as our reference member dashboard. Now, as I said earlier in this video, an important point when using Thrive Architect is that you want to design the desktop view, the desktop version of your page first. All the edits that you make and the settings that you set in your desktop view will flow down to and apply to the mobile view of that page as well. Some of these settings might not be appropriate for the mobile view as we've seen. Now, once you have your desktop view set and you're satisfied with it, then you can edit in the mobile view to correct those settings that don't look right in the mobile view and also optimize how things look in this view. Any edits and changes that you make in the mobile view won't change anything that you did in the desktop view. Alright, as a final check, the left image here is a long screenshot of how this membership dashboard that we just finished building in this video looks on my phone. this looks just about exactly the same in this top section. Alright, let's move down the page section by section. Let's look at upcoming events. Looks very similar. Then the My Dashboard section. And again, they're virtually identical. Now, minor differences here and there are to be expected because Thrive Architect's mobile view is a simulation and there are so many different mobile phone screen sizes as well as different versions of either the Android or iOS software running on a given phone. And I'm actually pretty impressed at how Thrive Architect's mobile view so closely matches how it looks on my phone. Just to mention that mine is an Android phone. So right then, this has been my step-by-step tutorial of how to build a membership dashboard like this one using Thrive Architect. So hopefully this will give you a good head start in your efforts to build your membership dashboard or other similar pages, as well as become more familiar with how to use Thrive Architect in editing and building your pages. Thrive Architect, as you've seen here, can give you fine-grained control over both the desktop and mobile versions of your web pages. It truly is a pretty awesome page builder. Alright now, if you have any questions at all about anything I went over in this video, feel free to ask in the comments below. I'm here to help. On my YouTube channel here, as well as on my site Do Your Dream Work, I produce content and information to help you solve problems and bust through barriers in your efforts to run a profitable online course or membership site business. Now, in recent times, I've created quite a bit of content on the Thrive suite of tools from Thrive Themes because I really feel it's a great set of tools for running your online business, especially if you have less of a tech background or if you just don't have time to navigate and troubleshoot the tech aspects of running your online business. And Thrive is what I use myself in my business. So if you're looking for information on either Thrive suite of tools or just generally running online courses or membership sites, feel free to check out the other videos I have on my channel here or on my site Do Your Dream Work. Alright now, thanks for watching and I hope to see you in my next video.